Hello and welcome back to our third tutorial in the series of for our landscape, and in this tutorial we're going to uh, put some texture, some color onto our tutorial. And the very first thing we're going to do is we are going to start to create a new folder. So I'm just right clicking here. We're going to call this material, and inside this folder I'm going to right click here again. I'm going to go to a material, and we're gonna call this m underscore landscape. So m means it's a material, and then I'm gonna right click this again, and I'm gonna create a material instance and just hit enter. And so now you can see right here, this is landscape material instance. You will see later why this matters. So I'm just gonna save all again, and now I'm going to open our material right here by double clicking it, and let's just take a look at what we got. We have right here our landscape material. We have here, a color, metallic, specular, roughness, and so forth. Now, a whole bunch of these we are actually not going to use. We are going to use the color, we are going to use the roughness, we are going to use the normals, and we're potentially probably also going to use the world displacement. Now you can see that this world displacement is grayed out, so we can change this immediately by scrolling down here, and we're going to find where it says tessellation. There it is. It says no tessellation here, and we're going to switch this to flat tessellation, and now our displacement is turned on. But because we have nothing plugged in, you can see all we get is a plain black surface. So we need some textures to plug into this. So I'm just going to apply my changes that I've made, save this, and close out of it. So, and you can see right there that both our master material and our instance have updated. So any change that we're making in our master material will take effect in our instance. So now in order to get some materials in here, we're going to use Quixel. So Quixel Bridge should be installed, so you should have the Megascans plugin installed. If it is not installed, go to Edit, Plugins, type in Megascans, and enable this. You will need to restart, and then it should be fine. So I'm just going to launch the Quixel Bridge now. And here it comes. And so the bridge is, this resource of thousands of free assets, 3D, 2D. It's massive, and it's absolutely phenomenal. It really it's really what makes Unreal so incredibly capable. Just having all these assets available is absolutely incredible. So in this case, we want some ground textures. So I'm just going to type in moss, and we want a surface. So I'm just going to select surfaces, and right here we have a whole bunch of surfaces, and you can see it's like it's a lot. Let me see what. So I've downloaded this one recently. You can tell because it has this green check mark. So this is already downloaded. If you want something and you don't have it downloaded yet, you can just right click on here, or if you click on this, it will tell you what it is, and it will also tell you what size. So you can choose right here what size you want to download this in. Now here you got to be a little bit careful. You're right. It depends on how close are we going to get to, to this texture? If we're not getting that close, it's probably wise to go with a 2K resolution. On occasion, maybe you need an 8K resolution if you're getting very close. So, in our case, I think I stuck with a 4K resolution on this one the last time, so I'm just gonna use it because it's already downloaded. And then in order to transfer it, once it's downloaded, once you have this check mark, then in order to transfer it to the engine, all we do is click this little plus symbol, or you can click it down here, and you will see immediately the export to the engine has started. And right there you saw this pop up right here, so here is our material. Now the other thing I'm gonna also get is something rocky. So let's see. All right, I already have downloaded this one here as well, so I'm just gonna load this over too. And now we can close the bridge. So what's happened here in our content folder is that automatically a Megascans folder was created, and in that Megascans folder now we have surfaces, and there is our mossy ground and our rocky surface. Now there is a ready-made material in here, right in here, but this is not what we're going to be using. What we're going to be using are these essentially, images, and that's what we're going to start importing into our own material. So let's first open our own material. So here it is. And now let me try to figure this out with, not moving this off the screen for you. So now I'm going to go to my mossy ground right here, and I'm interested in those 4 materials. So I'm going to shift select all of them and then control click this one to deselect it. And then I'm just going to grab this and drag it over right into here. And you can see here are my materials. Now, if I just connect this stuff here now, well, let's just do it. So I'm going to take my material, connect it to base color. This right here was my roughness. This right here is my normals. And this right here is my displacement. I click apply. You can see what happened right there. And we can now, if we wanted to, click on our landscape, go down to the material, go to our material instance, drop this on there, and there we are. So that does not look right. So the one thing you can actually see now is if we go very close, the material is there, but it is heavily tiled, so it probably should be a little bigger. It's heavily tiled. It also applies kind of like, it applies everywhere. So, this may not be the best way to do it. So we're going to make this a little bit more complex. Now, let me just explain some of those things here. So this is our color. Now in this case, it's called albedo. Albedo color, same thing. Um, Roughness. What the roughness does is it will tell you how shiny something is. So you can see you have like different, like the rocks on here have a different value of shininess than the grass or moss, for example. So that's what this map here does. The normals, that's a little tricky to explain. Um, the thing is that the normals are essentially, if I disconnect this displacement, which probably isn't even working the way it's plugged in, so if I disconnect this here and hit apply, and then we go back to our landscape. It's taking its time here. Okay, so let's go back to our landscape. Take a look right here. So it looks like, from here it looks like there are three-dimensional rocks sitting on the ground. Um, but there aren't. If we go really close down, it kind of reveals that this is not the case. It's a two-dimensional surface. You see there's no displacement whatsoever. It simulates this three-dimensionality, and it does that through the normal map. The normal map ultimately, tricks the eye that there are lights and shadows being created, and as the lighting changes, this light and these shadows will change because of the normal map. So if you are at a certain distance, you can actually get away with a normal map, and a normal map is way less costly because you can also then have a lot less tessellation, which means that you don't need to have as much detail in a landscape or whatever object, and the normals will fool the eye into thinking that there is detail that is actually not there. When you are physically using a displacement displacement node, then this is the same thing than the height map that we've used earlier. So the black and white levels are actually physically displacing a mesh, which means that you need more tessellation to be even able to do this, right? To do this type of displacement, which means it's a much more, it's a more heavy object. It makes the whole thing harder on the computer to calculate. Um, Now we're gonna end up using the displacement, but I just wanted you to be aware, how this kind of works. So in this case scenario, we're now, the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to adjust the scale, and so we're gonna right click, and if you type in landscape, there should be this landscape layer coordinates node, and that pops up. If you click on this and you look at what's down here, then you can see you've got a mapping scale, and then a rotation. Then it says pan U and pan V. So scale is essentially the size. And in our case scenario, we actually created an environment at the scale of 4033. So we're going to punch this in there, 4033, which is going to make our texture very big. But at this point, there's a reason to this. Rotation, we don't need to bother with this now, but it's good to know that we can rotate it. We will put a rotation perimeter in there ultimately. And then, well, what does this U and V mean? Well, okay, let me use a kind of like a description that everybody uses. I'm gonna stress Google here for this. Let's see, unwrap UV. Okay, there it is. the chocolate Santa that everybody uses to explain what. Of course, now clicked on the wrong thing. So this is the chocolate Santa that everybody uses to explain what UVs are. So when you have a 3D object and you have a two-dimensional texture map like this, then you're kind of like, you're wrapping this image onto this three-dimensional object. And what happens is that if there's potentially distortion happening, so the way the UVs need to be created, first of all, they need to be even, so there shouldn't be any stretching in there. And then the UV tile itself, the image tile, needs to, consider the three-dimensionality of this here. So you can see right there that, on a two-dimensional surface, this really doesn't look like a Santa figure, but it wraps okay onto there. Okay? And this is kind of like what we're doing. We have two-dimensional surfaces that are being wrapped onto a three-dimensional geometry. So in this case here, it's a sphere, and in this case here, it is a larger landmass. So that's kind of like what is happening here. And this does have inherently some problems. And you see right here, there's a little plugin that says UVs, and so we're now gonna take that and we're gonna plug this into our UVs. And right now, all it's gonna do is it's gonna scale this differently because we've typed in here a different scale. We're ultimately gonna change this. I mean, not in here, but we will eventually change this. And you can see that the scale has changed as I'm plugging this in right here. I'm gonna click apply, and now this should also have changed on our landscape. So here we are. Does not look great at all, but we are nowhere near done. So if I make changes to the UV scale now, obviously this, I could go in here now and make changes, right, and that will change how this here looks, because right now it's obviously way too big. But okay, looks like the video recording is kind of like slowing down the machine. So, but you see what's happening here, right? So it's like now we can see a little bit more. It's still way too big, right? But at least we can see it. But we're gonna go back to 4033, which means we're gonna have to wait again. All right. Okay, so we have started. Now the next thing we're gonna do is our texture samples. We're gonna convert those to perimeters. Now, at this point, well, we don't have any perimeters yet. So at this point, in our instance, this looks different, and a perimeter is going to ultimately show up in here, which is going to permit us to make certain changes on the fly to materials, and we can create, multiple instances, and then have multiple instances that do different, where we have access to the changes. Because if we make the change in the master material, it will affect all the instances. But if we have the functionality of making changes in the instances, we can have ultimately different materials out of one master material. And that's the point here. So we can, if right now I've got mossy rock surface, but if I want to have this, for example, be a snow surface, I can change that if I convert this to a perimeter that then I can access through the instance. So I'm going to right click this here, and I'm going to go convert to perimeter, and it's going to ask me to give it a name. And in this case, I'm going to go A_albedo. You can call this whatever you like. It's like you could call this, moss color, for example. But as I said before, I might want to change this material later to, let's say, snow, and so then I don't want it to be called moss. I like going with ABC, so I kind of like know, to me that works. But it's, whatever works for you. So, and I'm gonna go through all of those to do this. So this is now A roughness. Again, right click, convert to perimeter. A normal. Convert to perimeter. A displacement. Okay, so we've got that. We're going to apply this. And now these should actually show up in our instance once this is done. So let's take a look. And here they are. Okay. So you can see right there. Now I can highlight them. I can turn them on, and I can make changes. Our displacement doesn't show up because it's not plugged in. I'm going to plug it in, it will show up. So world displacement, here it is. And here it is, our displacement. Okay, but we are still nowhere done because this is not much of a material. We don't want it set up like that. So what we're going to do now is the first thing I want to do is I want to have a perimeter that permits me to scale this stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the number 1 key and click left. And that gives us this little thing. And I'm going to right click and go convert to perimeter. And I'm going to go A material scale. And then I'm going to right click and go multiply. So now what's going to happen, it's going to take that scale and we're going to plug that into the multiply node, and it's going to multiply with whatever number we're going to type into here. So let's do that. So I'm going to go plug this in here, plug this in there, shift click, move this up. And now we're going to plug that into here. By the way, if you want to break a node, you just put your mouse on it, hold Alt, and click on it. So we're going to put this back here. And now we're just going to, we could connect all of this here. We would connect all of these to here. But there's another thing I want to do. I also want to be able to rotate it. And for that we need a node that is called a custom rotator. Is it in here? There it is. Custom rotator. So we're going to go and patch this here straight into, so let's see, here's our UVs. Patch this straight into our rotator. And then here's the rotation angle, and we're just gonna right click this and go promote this to a perimeter, and it's gonna give us that node right away. And look what it says. Rotation angle 0 to 1. So the numbers that you would punch in are in between 0 to 1. So that means that, you know, a 90-degree angle would be 0.25, right? So you just got to be aware of that, because this happens to me quite frequently. Like, I look at a rotator and I type in like a 45-degree angle, not realizing that, you know, it should be 125 right there. So okay, and now we're going to plug this in. So now we're going to plug this into our UVs, into color, into roughness, into normals, and we're also going to patch this into our displacement. Okay, and now we have already a much more advanced material that we can do stuff with. Let's click save. If we now look at the instance, we have now material scale, material rotation is right here, right? So we can start mess about with this, and you see stuff has changed, right? And you know, we'll start messing around with this later. But let's continue building our material. So as you saw before, this repetitious pattern is called tiling, and this is one of the things that we want to try and avoid as much as we can, because it just doesn't look natural. And there's different ways to, you know, kind of like try to get rid of the tiling. But and to some extent, this is why we put in a scale and a rotation node here, because what we're going to do is we're going to take all of this. I'm going to Control W it, and I have this a second time. And what that's going to permit me is, this is going to permit me to use this exact same material twice, but at a different scale and at a different rotation. And by doing so, I, you know, get the, you know, get to kind of like get rid of that repetition. If you really want to, you know, want to get exact with this and really want to avoid any kind of repetition, you could, you know, duplicate this a third time and patch this in. But, you know, we're going to stick to 2 at this point. But there's one thing we do have to change, and that is we have to change the names, because, you know, right now, if these names stay the same, we're not going to get, not going to get a second option in the instance. So we're going to call this B material, and we're just going to plain and simply change the first letter of everything. So this right here, we actually didn't name this over there, so let me go back there. So right here, we're going to call this A rotation. Then we also have to do this with all the materials themselves. And even though this is a little bit annoying, you can see by just, you know, doing this A material, B material, C material, you are to some extent speeding this up a little bit and having to type in, you know, grass and moss and rock and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so now we got a problem, because we can't really plug this in here, right? So, because if I take this and I plug it in here, this is getting disconnected. So this is not This is not working like that. So what we now need next is we need another node which is called make material attributes. And right there it is. And this now is the first one where we can patch this in. So we can now go into here, base color, roughness, normal, and displacement. Good. We probably should disconnect this here now so it's not going to get confusing. So we ultimately still have to patch it in here, right? But now we can take this here, Control W for duplicating it, patch this in here, and go again, color, roughness, normal, and world displacement. Good. So, up next, I'm going to grab all of this and completely duplicate this again with Control W. Move this down here. Now we got to go through this annoying thing of renaming everything again, so this is now C. Rotation is also C. Roughness. Oopsie, what did I do? Made a mistake here, I already went too far there. Okay, so alright. Now, I don't want this to be the same material, so I'm just going to click on this here now. And you see it right here, it shows up. And now I'm going to go into my content, into my Megascans, surfaces, and now I'm going to go to my rock stuff. So this is the albedo. Now I'm going to go rock albedo, move this over here. Click on my roughness for my rocks, move that over there. Normals, move that in here. And also move the displacement in here. I'm going to save this. You can see all the stars on here, so we probably should save all. And our material is black because we're no longer patched into our material, but no worries, we're going to get there. Okay, so we have our 3 materials now, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create what's called a layer blend node. So right click, layer blend. There it is, landscape layer blend. So it's tripped me up for a moment right there. Okay, so we have our layer blend node right here, and we have 3 materials. So we gotta input into our layer blend node these 3 materials. We're gonna hit plus. First one, we're gonna call it a material. And we're gonna need to change the weight, the preview weight, to something other than 0, so 0.5. fine. And then I'm gonna go make another, open that up, call this B material. Again, 0.5. And the third one, called C material. Again, 0.5. Okay, and what has happened here now is that these have now shown up in the layer blends, and you can see, if you want more, you can just keep on going the way we've been going, and just plug them in. So now I'm going to plug this in here, plug this in there, plug this in here. Now there's one thing that it will work the way it is, but you can actually see that each one of those has the exact same node to tell it what the mapping scale is. Right? This node and this node, they all do the same thing. So that it would make sense, for the purpose of efficiency, to just use a single node. So we can delete this node and delete this node and just use that very one node to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to plug this in here. I'm going to plug this in here. And nothing has changed. We're just using now a single node to drive the scale of all three of our textures. Okay. Click apply. Save all. And let's move on. So we still cannot plug this in because, well, we don't have, we only have one output here. So we need something else in between. So there is a node called break material attributes. That now is going to be the one. So I'm going to go plug this in here. Base color to base color. Roughness to roughness. Normal to normal. And world displacement to world displacement. And now you can see our material updated, because now it's actually receiving this information. Okay, now we could start painting this material now onto our surface, but there's a few things I actually want to do that's going to make this material a little better after it's done saving. So let's work on this a little bit. Now, one of the things that's not going to work out of the box is the displacement. It's just not going to show up. We're going to have to crank up the displacement, and we're going to have to build something to make this work. And so there is this node called vertex normals. And we're going to use this one. And we're going to use a multiply. And we're going to use actually two of those. So Control W. And we're going to take this, patch it into here. We're going to patch that into our world displacement. going to come out of our world displacement from here. We're going to patch that into here. And then we're going to create a perimeter so we can actually type it in. We're going to call it displacement. And note I'm not calling it A, C, B, or C because I'm actually, we could put this in between here and give all of them A, B, and C unique sets of displacement. If you just use the exact same thing that I'm building right here in here. But right now, the way I'm patching it in, it's going to affect all of our textures. Okay? So, and we should now have in here a, oops, did we save it? So after we save it, it should show up. So we can then increase or decrease the displacement. So let's take a look. There it is. Okay. Well, this is already pretty good. There's another thing you might want to do, and that is you might want to mess with the color. And in this case, I'm just going to build it into the rock color. So I'm going to add a multiply node. And you can put this same thing into the others as well. But just going to do this in the rocks right now. And I'm going to put in vector. And it's going to come up as vector perimeter. And I'm going to call this C color. And I think you're kind of like catching on how this is going to work. So albedo is our color. I'll plug this in here. And we're going to take that and plug it in there. And then we're going to take this and plug it in here. And now we have the possibility to adjust the color just by clicking on this and making changes. So right now I'm just going to crank this up here so it's going to be visible. But we can now, once this is saved, we can, go into the instance and open this up and make color adjustments of our rocks. If you want to make color adjustments of the moss, you just take this here, copy it, and patch it in here and in here, and you have two individual color adjustments for that. Alright. We could call this done, but there is, obviously there's a lot more that can be done to a material, and this is a very simple material, even though it's starting to look complex. It really isn't. But there's one trick that I've run into, which is really nice, and that with that one we're actually going to steal some node functions from another material. We're going to go into the content right here. We're going to go into the starter content, and then the materials of the starter content, there's this gold material right here. I'm going to open that. And there is this macro texture variation thing. And that creates these splotches that are on here. What we're going to do is we're going to take this, Control V it, and we're just going to steal this. Sorry, Control C. Okay, Control C this. Control V. And here we are. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our albedo of the final material, of course. So let's bring this down here a little bit. and I'm gonna patch this with a multiply node in here. And what this is gonna do is it will create these, you know, pattern, these splotches that you saw on the gold material on our texture too, and that is really good for hiding our tiling. Now, the one thing that if you look in this material right here that is not right is so there are texture coordinates right here. So this is, you know, this is the UVs, and we're not creating a gold material, we're creating a landscape. So our landscape, we know, has a scale of 4033, and we have this already here. So all we're going to do is we're going to simply take these three and delete them, and then we're going to patch our, just going to drag this up here so we can see it, patch this in here. And now it would be nice to be able to also scale these splotches, or whatever you want to call them. So we're just going to create a scalar perimeter, and we're just going to call this, I don't know, maybe a pattern scale. And we're going to plug this into all three of them. Okay, and you can see that what it's using is it's using three different pattern size textures to create this. Which, if we convert those to perimeters, we could change those too. So, you know, there's a lot of different things you can do, but at this point we don't need that. So this is it. This is our material now that we have created. We have a lot of different functions. We've got our moss surface for one scale, our moss surface for the second scale. We have our rock surface. Our rock surface has a color adjustment right there. We have a universal displacement adjustment for all three at the same time. And we have a pattern that goes on top of all of this, for which we have a scale adjustment as well. So that's what we've built. And we're going to hit apply. And now we're not going to need that gold thing. We can close out of this. And here is our landscape. It doesn't look like much yet, but we're going to make that work. And I think this is a very good spot to kind of like take a break and maybe go into the next tutorial on how we're going to get this actually on there. So I'll see you in a bit.